To use the Nunn Design Open Back Bezels, like you're seeing here, with the crystal clay, you'll want to do the following steps. First, you're going to clean the Nunn Design bezels using a little bit of rubbing alcohol and a Q-tip. And then you're going to apply a little bit of tape onto the back side of the bezel. You're then going to mix the crystal clay and apply it inside of the bezel. The Nunn Design bezels are plated first and then they're oxidized. So you want to remove any of that oxidization from the bezel prior to placing any of the clay or the resin inside. These pieces are cast in lead-free pewter and then plated with precious metals. And then the oxidization that we apply onto the surface is what absorbs into the precious metals and gives it this aged look. Go ahead and clean the surface of all of the bezels that you would like to use for this project. Once you've put a little bit of rubbing alcohol onto the bezels, you can go in and just make sure that everything is removed. So you're removing any of the oxidization as well as any oils or dirt. These things make it more challenging for the resin or the crystal clay to stick to the actual bezels. So clean up all of the bezels before the next step. Next, we're going to apply a little bit of the tape onto the back side of the bezels, and this will give us a nice firm surface to place the clay into and have it be flat on both sides. So I'm using a U-line. This is an S447. This is a very thick packing tape. I like it, but there's aspects of it that I don't like, and I haven't found the perfect solution yet. What I don't like is that there's often a lot of mottling. It's kind of like the glue on the back side of it can be kind of inconsistent, and that mottling can show up on my clay. It can also show up on the resin. So just cut off a little bit. I'm going to look to see if I can show you. See how that mottling, you see all of that right there? Try to stay away from areas like that because that will show up on the clay. So I'm looking for a nice clean area to attach this onto. So place it onto an area that doesn't have that little mottling, and then I just burnish it down by pressing it and rubbing it back and forth onto my work surface, and that burnishes the tape onto the back side of the bezel. Then I like to trim away this excess tape just because I find it gets stuck on my shirt or fingers or whatnot. So I just trim that away and just have the bare necessities of what I need for that to be a solid back. Crystal clay is a 2-part epoxy clay that air dries. You have 90 to 120 minutes to work with this before it sets up and is firm like cement. You can embed in it, you can sculpt in it, you can do all kinds of fun things. Don't let the packaging deceive you because it is an awesome product. So when you open up the kit, this is the 50 gram pack. You'll take out the different parts, and you'll find 50 grams of the clay. I'm working with the black, so it has the part A and the part B, and it also comes with a pair of gloves. When working with the crystal clay, you want to wear your gloves when it is in the two parts. This hardener is the resin epoxy, and it's a good idea to be wearing gloves when you're working with this when it's in the raw form. Once it's been activated, the two parts have mixed. It is now neutral, and you can take off your gloves. But for this first step, we're going to go ahead and put the gloves on. I like to put a little bit of baby powder on my hands prior to putting them in the gloves. It keeps my hands nice and dry, and so it's easier for me to get the gloves on and off. Once you have your gloves on, I also like to lay down a piece of plastic on my work surface so I can put the clay on so it doesn't stick to my paper. You want to open up part A and part B and pinch off a ball size to work with. Once you have your part A and part B and you have equal size balls, or pretty darn close to being equal size, you'll want to mix the two parts together until they're fully blended. So these gloves are very large for my hand, and I typically use a latex glove that is more my size, but these are the ones that are in the package, and they are very handy to have on the ready. Use a wet wipe to wipe down your gloves after you have blended the two parts together. This will help you reuse your gloves over and over again between projects. So my gloves are fairly clean, and to remove them, just pull on the fingertips, and the gloves will usually slide off and not be inside out, so it makes it easy to reuse these again and again. Once I have finished mixing the clay, I use a wet wipe to wipe down my hands to remove any of the baby powder that might be on my hands from the gloves. Now my clay is blended together and it's activated, and I can go ahead and use it on my next project. When you're finished with the crystal clay, you can go ahead and close up the package and seal it as tight as you can, removing any of the excess air. The crystal clay comes in a little package like this, but when I'm restoring it, I like to put part A in one bag, closing that up and just squeezing out the air. And then the part B, I like to seal up and keep in a separate bag. And this is just to help prevent it from hardening a little bit sooner than it needs to. So I keep the A inside here, and then the B is completely in its own bag. So there's not any risk whatsoever of these two getting activated. So I'll put the two in, pull out any excess air, and seal it up. When you're first starting out, you more than likely will mix probably too much clay or not enough clay, and over time you will get the knack of being able to guesstimate exactly how much clay you'll need. But just know that you probably will have too much. I pinched off a tiny little bit, and I'm going to be pressing it into this section up here. I'm going to take off a little bit, and then I'm going to roll it into a nice smooth ball. If this is really sticky, you can wait for about 10 minutes and it'll start to set up. You have 90 to 120 minutes to work with this clay once it's activated, so you have plenty of time. All right, so I pinched off a little bit and rolled it into a nice smooth ball, and now I'm going to press this down into the surface of this bezel. So I can guesstimate right away, do I have a lot of clay or do I have enough? I know from experience that this is probably a good amount, but I'll show you what you can do if you have too much clay or not enough. So I'm pressing it down now into the base of this bezel. And as you saw, I kind of stuck it into the middle, the center area of the bezel, and now I'm using my thumb to press it out and fill up the cavities of where the clay is not. So when I get to this corner here, this is my starting point, I know from experience that if I don't press it really well into this corner, it will have like a little air pocket. Let me see, on this one I think I had, here you can see what happens if you don't press it in really well on the back side. You see, like when I took the tape off, there was a little bit of it's kind of like a little air pocket, a little gap right inside of there. It's hard to notice, but I do see it there. So you'll want to make sure that you press the clay fully into that area. And if it's really tricky, you can take a toothpick, oh, that had a little gold foil on it, we don't want that, and press it up inside of there, kind of just knowing that you've got the base of this filled, and then use your finger to move the clay the rest of the way over. You see that? All right, so let's go back in. I got a little bit of that gold foil on there. That could be cool. And then let's go ahead and do this other side. So I'm just using my thumb to press that clay, and I'm also using this finger on this side of the tape to make sure that I have a nice flat surface that I'm pressing down into. So I'm moving that clay over into this corner over here. Use my toothpick to go in and make sure that it's over in that corner and pressed up over in there. You can double check on the back side. Looks like I need a little bit more. Down in that corner. And now I will press the clay over in there and smooth it out. See how that is? So if I didn't have, I can go back in and kind of make sure that that's nice and consistent in its level of flatness. See how that is? If I had too much clay and well, you could actually put a lot of clay in and you could dome it slightly. But if you had too much clay, you can also pinch it off and then just continue to pat down. So let's do the bottom side now. Now, first of all, I just want to say, you could leave that. I like that you can do blocking, you can do one color up here, you can do another color down here. You don't even need to put clay on both sides, you can just put it on one. You could actually even put a chain, like a jump ring here and a jump ring here, and then dangle something off the bottom. So there's a lot of opportunities of fun things that you can do with this. Another thing is that you could link this together, so you put your jump ring on here and your jump ring over here, and you can make this into a bracelet. So lots of opportunities of fun things to do. So let's do the other side. I know I'm going to use a much smaller size ball for that area. So I pinched off a little bit. I have a feeling that this is way too much clay, but I'll show you how to handle that. So you have a nice ball. So I have a nice, there's a smaller area inside of here. So a little trick is I can pull this a little bit like this and then create a nice sharp point. And that'll also help me go up into that recessed, or not that pointy area right there. You see how I did that? So I made that nice shape there first, placed it inside of here, and now I can pull the clay this way and push the clay this way as I'm pressing down. This finger is on the back and it's pressing up against the back to give it support. So I'm keeping it inside of that shape so you can see, and I can see, I have way too much clay. So let me just show you. I'm just really focused on making sure I first have it up into this corner. So I can flip it over. You can see that I have a little gap in there. You can see it right through the tape. So I can take my toothpick, go up inside of here, make sure that I've got that clay pressed down into that back side. Now I'm going to come back and push. I'm using my finger to push it back up inside of there. Now coming back the other direction. Now I have way more clay than I think I'm going to need here, so I'm just kind of balling it up, and I'm going to pinch it off of there and just remove some of that clay. Now I'm moving it over into this corner. Come in with my toothpick, make sure that I have that over into this corner as well. Double checking my back, and now I can smooth it down with my fingers. So that's showing how you can, pinch off if you had a little bit too much clay. The top part here, if I wanted to add a little bit more clay to make sure that this was nice and flat, I can also just push this. I'm pushing it up from the back side to bring that surface up a little bit higher. That gives you a really good idea of how to put this in an open back bezel. The last step that you're going to want to do is just come on in. You can wipe down to make sure the clay is nice and smooth, so if you had any fingerprints in there, and then you're wiping away any of the crystal clay from the surface of the bezel. When this sets up, it'll be hard as cement, so you want to make sure that you have a nice clean surface. Other things, if you had a lot of crystal clay, I'm just wiping this now off of my hands and fingers, because if I come in here and I pick this up again, if I want to go in, let's just say that you had your piece kind of look like that, right? So what you'll want to do is come on in, and first of all, you're going to try to push it back in there because you don't want to lose the height of the clay, so just use your thumb to push it back in and away from that edge. And then you can use your crystal clay, use your wet wipe to smooth out that crystal clay. I'm just tapping this down to make sure that I have a nice flat and smooth surface. Alright, so now we're going to let that set inside of that bezel, and then we will remove the tape from the back side, and I'll show you how to handle that. So set that aside for about 12 hours, and we'll come back and remove the tape. So I have another bezel that I've already done up, and this one now is hard to the touch. It's gone through its whole curing time, and I'm ready to remove the tape from the back. So I just start to pull back on the side edges, and it will release from the back side of the clay. And oftentimes I'll have like sticky residue that has stayed onto the clay that was on the back side of the tape. And so to remove that, I'm going to just put this down onto a little piece of plastic. You can use one of the bags that this bezels came in. And I'm going to use a little product called Goo Gone. This is a container that I've had forever. I actually got it at a garage sale, but you can get it online. And it is awesome for removing little sticky substances on the back of your bezel. So I placed a drop or two onto the back side on my little piece of plastic. And now I'm going to go in, and you can just slightly scrape on the back side. And if there is any kind of stickiness from the tape, it'll come off really, really easy. This is an awesome product, and I have highly recommend it for all of your resin projects that you're using that have a tape backing on the back side. All right, so once you have that all cleaned up, just go ahead and wipe it down. The Goo Gone has a nice citrus smell. It's a very refreshing product to use because a lot of the stuff I have is kind of stinky, but this is nice. And that is how you use the crystal clay within an open back bezel. And here is the finished project attached onto a fun bangle bracelet.